Listen, I need to tell you something before we even start. What I'm about to share with you is the kind of story that will break your heart and then put it back together again in the best way possible. And I promise you, by the time we reach the end, you'll understand exactly why this moment matters so much. My name is Morgan. And this is the true story of how I went from having $7 in my pocket on the coldest night of my life to standing on a beach in Miami, Florida, with everything I ever dreamed of. But to get there, I had to lose everything first. Let me take you back to January 2015. One of the coldest winters Atlanta had ever experienced, the kind of cold where the thermometer doesn't just drop below freezing. It reads 1 degree Fahrenheit, just one single degree. I was lying awake in a tiny efficiency apartment on the south side of the city, listening to my daughter breathe in the darkness. Her name was Aaliyah. She was 1 year and 2 months old. She just learned to walk, holding onto furniture with these tiny little fingers that would grab mine whenever she needed comfort. And her first word, the one word that made my entire heart explode with love every single time she whispered it in that soft baby voice, was Mama. But that night, I couldn't sleep. I kept wrapping her in more blankets. 2 blankets, then 3. Then I'd unwrap them again to check if she was too hot. The radiators in that apartment barely worked. They clanked and hissed but produced almost nothing. I was terrified. Absolutely terrified that my daughter would freeze in the night, that I wouldn't be enough to keep her warm, that I'd fail at the one job that mattered more than anything else in the world. I kept touching her forehead, her hands, her tiny feet, always checking, always making sure she was breathing, making sure she was safe. Around 11 o'clock that night, I heard the sound that made my stomach drop, keys fumbling at the lock, footsteps stumbling, curses being muttered under breath. My husband, Andre, was coming home, and from the sound of his footsteps, he was drunk. Again. Now let me tell you about Andre. We'd been married for 4 years at that point. When I first met him, he seemed so different. He was childhood friends with a wealthy businessman named Vincent Everett. He had big plans, real, tangible plans. He told me, "I'm going to be an executive. We'll have our own house. A new car. We'll take trips to the beach every summer." I believed him. Why wouldn't I? I was working as a bookkeeper for a small company, juggling all our bills, managing every dollar while he was supposedly building his career toward something incredible. Except that career never really materialized. What actually happened was endless poker nights, long lunches with friends where nothing got accomplished, and promises of "you just wait and see" that never came true, and drinking. More and more drinking. The door flew open. Andre stumbled into the hallway and hit the coat rack with his shoulder so hard that jackets rained down onto the floor. "S-H-H," I whispered, peering out of the room, terrified I'd disturb Aaliyah, who'd finally fallen asleep. But when I looked at him in the hallway, I knew immediately that something was different tonight. This wasn't just drunk Andre. This was angry Andre, the dangerous kind of angry, the kind where someone is looking for a target to hurt. "What happened?" I asked carefully. He looked at me with these hazy, unfocused eyes, and his jaw was clenched so tight I thought it might break. "I got fired," he said. Those 3 words, that's all it took. 3 words and everything changed. I felt my stomach drop like I was falling. Fired, not laid off, not temporary, fired. And in that moment, I didn't even fully understand how much those 2 words would reshape everything about our lives. "How?" I asked. "Andre, what happened? I don't understand." He walked to the kitchen and yanked the refrigerator door open so hard it slammed against the wall. He stared into the empty shelves like they'd personally betrayed him. "It's all your fault," he said quietly. "What? Andre, how is this my fault? I don't even work where you do. I don't know anything about your job situation." He spun around so fast that I actually flinched. I'd never seen him move that way before. "All of it," he said, and his voice was getting louder now. "My entire life is your fault. You and that kid. Your anchors around my neck. If it weren't for you 2 dragging me down, I'd have been an executive years ago. I'd have everything by now." I tried to stay calm. I'd learned that technique by then. Stay calm, don't escalate, don't make it worse. "Andre, you're drunk." "Let's talk about this in the morning. We'll figure something out. I can take on more side work. We can find a way to manage this together." More side work, he laughed then, and it was the most horrible, grating sound that didn't even sound human. Who needs you? A dumb broad with a kid dragging her down. Those words, that phrase, it was the moment something shifted inside me, the moment I realized that my marriage wasn't going to survive this. I just didn't know how immediately and brutally it was all about to end. Don't talk like that in front of Aaliyah, I said, my voice shaking. She'll grow up just like you, he spat. Same dumb broad, same loser, destined for nothing. I reached out to touch his shoulder. Maybe if I could just calm him down, get him to sit, get some water in him, we could get through this night. He shoved me. Hard. My back hit the door frame with such force that the pain shot up my entire spine. I gasped. Don't touch me, he snarled. I'm sick of you. 4 years. 4 years you've been sucking the life out of me, draining me dry. That's when Aaliyah woke up. The shouting had penetrated through her sleep. Her crying started soft at first, then escalated into these desperate, terrified screams. Andre looked toward the bedroom with pure disgust in his eyes. That's all it ever does, he said coldly. Scream, cry, I can't take it anymore, I can't take any of it. And then he did something that I will never forget for as long as I live. He rushed into the bedroom toward my daughter. I ran after him, but he was faster. He threw open the closet and started flinging my things onto the floor. Dresses, sweaters, underwear, everything. It was like watching someone destroy a life piece by piece. Andre, stop, I screamed. Please, Andre, stop. But he wasn't listening to me. He was in a rage that I couldn't reach him in. He grabbed my hospital bag from when I gave birth to Aaliyah and started stuffing her things into it. Snowsuits, onesies, diapers, everything he could grab. Get out, he said, and his voice was ice cold now. Both of you, get out of my apartment. I can't do this anymore. I grabbed Aaliyah from her crib. My daughter was screaming, confused, absolutely terrified. I was shaking so badly I could barely hold her steady against my chest. You can't kick us out, I said desperately. This is our home, Andre. We're your family. We love you. He grabbed my elbow and dragged me toward the door. It's rented in my name, he said coldly. Only my name, and I want you out. Now. I pulled free and ran back to grab Aaliyah, pressing her tight against my chest. Aaliyah was sobbing. I was sobbing. Everything was falling apart in real time, and I couldn't stop it. Andre pushed us both toward the door, grabbed my coat and the bag of belongings, and literally threw them into the hallway after us. The door slammed shut behind us with such finality that it echoed through the hallway. I stood there in that hallway, holding my crying daughter, and I banged on the door. I screamed, I cried, I begged. Andre, please open the door. I have nowhere to go. Nothing. Silence. The neighbors behind their walls stayed silent too. They were afraid of Andre. They'd heard his scenes before. I walked outside because the hallway was almost as cold as the street anyway. The light bulb above the entrance flickered. Tiny pellets of snow were falling, and the wind cut through my coat like knives. My thin coat that wasn't nearly warm enough. I had $7 in my pocket. $7. That's it. My phone was still inside the apartment. My ID was inside the apartment. Everything important was inside the apartment. And the man inside that apartment had just thrown me and my baby out into a blizzard with nothing but the clothes on our backs and a bag of belongings. Aaliyah stopped crying then, not because she was comforted. Because she was confused, too cold, too exhausted. She just stared up at me with these huge gray eyes, and that look absolutely terrified me more than the freezing air ever could. Because in that moment, I realized something that shook me to my core. I didn't have the right to fall apart. I didn't have the right to surrender. I had a child, a 1-year-old child who was depending entirely on me for survival. I took a deep breath and started walking toward the bus stop. My mind was racing. My mother lived 6 hours away in Charlotte, North Carolina, but a bus ticket cost more than $200. I didn't have $200. I had 7 friends. Andre had systematically pushed every single friend out of my life over the years. She calls too much. He's a bad influence. She looks at me funny. By the time I realized what was happening, I was completely isolated. There was literally no one I could call. No one who'd take me in on the coldest night of the year. There was only one place I could go late at night with no money and no ID. The Greyhound bus station downtown. The bus ride there cost $3. That would leave me with $4 and a 1-year-old daughter and a prayer that something would work out. I started walking, and I kept walking. The Greyhound station greeted me with light and warmth and the smell of bleach. I pushed through the doors and felt this tiny bit of relief wash over me. At least we wouldn't freeze here. At least we'd have walls and a roof and other human beings around us. There weren't many people inside. A few were sleeping on the plastic seats. Homeless people, probably. Travelers stuck overnight. People with nowhere else to go. People like me. I sat down in a corner on a hard plastic bench and carefully unwrapped Aaliyah from the blankets. I checked her temperature, her hands, her little feet. Aaliyah's lips were turning blue, actually blue, from the cold. "Oh, God," I whispered. I started rubbing her hands frantically. I blew on her fingers. I wrapped her as tight as I could in my coat and held her close to my chest to transfer my body heat to her. Aaliyah whimpered softly. She was exhausted. She was also hungry. She'd eaten 4 hours ago, and at 1 year old, she needed to eat regularly, very regularly. I had $7. A jelly donut cost about $1, so I could buy one donut and break it into tiny pieces so Aaliyah could pick them up with her tiny fingers and feed herself. That's what I did. She ate the donut pieces slowly and looked up at me with those confused eyes. She didn't understand what was happening. Thank God for that. Then a voice cut through the quiet of the station. "Ma'am, this isn't a homeless shelter." A security guard, young guy in a uniform with a rubber baton on his belt. He stood over me like I was trash that had blown in with the cold. "Please," I said, and my voice was shaking. "I have nowhere to go tonight. I have my baby. It's 1 degree outside." "That's not my problem," he said coldly, like I'd asked him to solve world hunger. "This isn't a social services center. Either buy a ticket or get out, now." "I don't have money for a ticket," I whispered. "Then get out, right now." I felt the tears streaming down my cheeks. Aaliyah looked up at the guard, and she didn't understand why the man was being so cruel to her mother. She didn't understand why the world was suddenly so hard, and then a voice came from the side. Male, low, calm, like warm water on a freezing night. "She's with me." A young black man got up from the neighboring bench. He wore a worn leather jacket that had seen better days. He was unshaven. He had a beat-up backpack at his feet. He looked like a drifter, like someone who hitchhikes and sleeps wherever they can, like someone with nothing. "We're waiting for a bus," he said, looking the guard straight in the eye. "It's 6 hours away. We'll be quiet." The guard opened his mouth to object, but something in this stranger's gaze made him change his mind. Something that said this man had nothing left to lose and wouldn't back down. Maybe it was authority, maybe it was something else, something quietly dangerous. The guard grunted. "Just watch yourself," he muttered, and he walked away. The man sat down next to me silently. He didn't ask questions. He didn't offer advice. He didn't tell me it would be okay or ask me what my story was. He just sat there. A minute later, he stood up and walked to the hot beverage machine. He came back with 2 cups of tea. "Tea with sugar will warm you up," he said, handing me 1 cup. I took it. My hands were shaking so badly that the tea spilled over the edges. He sat down again, and he just sat there with me and my crying daughter. Like it was the most normal thing in the world to be sitting in a bus station at night with a stranger and her child. Aaliyah, warmed by my body heat and exhausted from crying, eventually fell asleep in my arms, and I broke. I cried silently so as not to wake my daughter, but my shoulders shook and tears dripped right into my teacup. This stranger handed me a paper napkin without looking, just handed it. No words, no judgment, no pity. "Thank you," I whispered. "Cry," he said quietly. "It's okay, but then act." I looked at him. His face was ordinary, unremarkable. He looked maybe 30-something. His eyes were tired but smart, knowing. "Who are you?" I asked. "A person who also sat in this station once," he said. "Without a dime, a long time ago, but I remember what that feels like." "And what did you do?" I asked. Got up, started walking, step by step. There were no other options. He fell silent, and I didn't ask any more questions. We just sat in silence, and somehow that silence wasn't heavy. It was peaceful. It felt like having someone nearby who understood everything without needing explanation. After a while, he pulled a business card from his pocket and held it out to me. A simple white card, just a phone number written in plain black font. No name, no title, nothing else. "If you don't find a place to stay tomorrow," he said, "call this number. It's a shelter for women with children. They will help you." I took the card with trembling hands. "Thank you," I said again, though the word felt too small for what this stranger had just done for me. He nodded. And I must have dozed off because when I opened my eyes, the dawn was breaking outside the dirty station windows, and the bench beside me was empty. Only an empty teacup remained. I didn't even get a chance to ask his name. I called the number on the card at 7 in the morning when Aaliyah woke up and whimpered with hunger again. A woman's voice answered. She listened without interrupting. No judgment. Just listened to my entire story and then gave me an address. The Haven. That was the name. It was on the outskirts of the city, 3 bus stops from the station. I didn't have money for the bus, but the driver, an older black man with gray hair, looked at me and Aaliyah and waved his hand. "Go on through, sister," he said. "You two look like you've had a hard night." The 2-story building behind a high fence looked normal. Not luxurious, but not run down. A clean porch, curtains in the windows, warm light spilling from inside like a promise. An older woman in a strict gray dress opened the door for me. Her gray hair was pulled back in a bun. Her gaze was like an X-ray machine seeing right through you. "Morgan," she asked. "Yes," I said. "Miss Evelyn Price, the director. Come in, we'll feed the baby right now." She spoke concisely, without baby talk or sympathy, just direct, honest. She led me to a small room with 2 beds and a crib. "This is your room for the next 3 months," she said. "The dining hall is on the 1st floor. Breakfast is in 1 hour. The corporate daycare is in the next wing if you have questions." I had a million questions, but I only asked one. "Why 3 months?" "Because you have 3 months to find a job and housing," Miss Price said. "We will help you, but we won't move your feet for you. After 3 months, you're either on your feet or you free up the spot for the next person." She spoke harshly, but somehow there was no cruelty in her voice. Only truth, only reality, only the understanding that pity doesn't help anyone survive. "I will find a job," I said. Miss Price looked at me for a long, assessing moment. "We'll see," she said, and then she left. Within a week, I learned about the Haven. The shelter had been around for 5 years and had helped hundreds of women, battered women, evicted women, women running from abusive partners. They had lawyers who helped with documents, counselors who restored spirits, free daycare where I could leave my daughter while I worked. But the main thing that nobody could figure out was where the money came from. Every month, a huge sum was deposited into the shelter's account, an anonymous benefactor. No names, no conditions, no strings attached. "Who is he?" I asked Miss Price one day. "I don't know," she answered. "And I don't want to know. As long as the money keeps coming, we help people. That's what matters." I found a job within 2 weeks, cleaning, the Onyx Tower Business Center, 6 in the morning until 2 in the afternoon. I scrubbed floors and offices and dusted furniture and took out trash. The pay was low, but it was official. It had a record in my employee file. In the evenings, I picked up side work doing bookkeeping for small business owners. 3 clients, then 5, then 8. I sat up late at night in front of my laptop, balancing the numbers while Aaliyah slept in her crib beside me. I slept about 4 hours a night. I lost 17 pounds. Dark circles settled under my eyes like they'd moved in permanently, but I didn't give up. Step by step. I dropped Aaliyah off at the shelter's daycare at 5:30 in the morning and picked her up at 3 in the afternoon. She got used to it, stopped crying when I left, started saying more words. "Mama, give Dolly no." She never said daddy. 2 months later, I got a strange job offer. One of my regular clients, the owner of a small auto repair shop, recommended me to an acquaintance. He needed a remote bookkeeper for a construction company called Apex Development. The client contacted me via email. No calls, no meetings, just emails. The terms were strange. The pay was 3 times the market rate, but it required complete, fully transparent reporting. No shady business, complete honesty. I took the job. On the 3rd day, I found something I wasn't supposed to find. The previous bookkeeper at the firm was stealing. Brazenly, stupidly. Barely even trying to hide it. Inflated estimates, fake material purchases, payroll checks issued to non-existent workers. In 6 months, he had siphoned nearly $125,000 from the company. I sat in front of my laptop screen and thought about what to do. I could have stayed silent, closed my eyes, collected my good salary, not gotten involved. But I remembered the words of the stranger at the bus station. Cry, but then act. I wrote a detailed report exposing all the schemes. I listed the amounts. I attached the proof. And I sent it to the client. The reply came in 1 hour. Thank you. You are the first to notice this. I want to meet in person. Tomorrow, 2 o'clock, the Riverside Bistro on the Chattahoochee River. I barely slept that night. I kept running through scenarios in my head. Who is this client? Why does he want to meet? Is this a test? Will they blame me for uncovering someone else's fraud? The Riverside Bistro was small and cozy with a view of the water. I walked in at 1:55 and froze. Sitting at a table by the window was him, the same man from the bus station, same worn leather jacket, unshaven, a cup of coffee in front of him, a tablet nearby. He looked up at me. Sit down, Morgan. I think we have something to talk about. I sat across from him, my heart hammering so hard I thought it would jump out of my chest. It was you, I started and cut myself off. Yes, he said. I own Apex Development, and not just Apex. My name is Darius Benton. I imagine you have a lot of questions. I stared at him, unable to speak. Everything was jumbled in my head, the scruffy drifter at the station, the business card with no name, the shelter, the bookkeeping job, and now he was sitting across from me telling me he owned companies. Were you following me? I finally whispered. Darius shook his head. No, I gave you the shelter's card and forgot about it. Well, not forgot, but I wasn't looking for you specifically. Then my assistant said we needed a new bookkeeper. The previous one quit. I asked him to find someone reliable through word of mouth. Your name came up by chance. Atlanta isn't as big as it seems. The auto repair shop owner whose accounts you handle is an old acquaintance of mine. He recommended you. I didn't know it was you until I saw the name on the contract. A waiter brought me coffee, although I hadn't ordered any. Darius nodded at him and he disappeared like he'd been choreographed. So, what now? I asked. Why did you want to meet? Because you found the theft, Darius said calmly. 3 people looked at those documents in the 6 months before you, an auditor, a financial consultant, an outside accountant. No one noticed anything. Or they noticed and kept quiet. But you wrote a report. Why? Because it's wrong to steal, I said simply. And it's wrong to keep silent when you see theft, even if silence is more profitable. Darius paused, then said, I need a person like that in my company, not remote, in-house. A financial analyst. The salary is $7,500 a month. Official. Paid vacation. Sick leave. Corporate daycare for your daughter right near the office. Decide. $7,500. I was making $900 cleaning plus maybe $2,500 with my side hustles if I was lucky. $7,500 was a different life. My own apartment, decent food for Aaliyah, toys, doctors if she got sick, books, a future that didn't feel impossible. I don't take handouts, I said. It's not a handout, Darius said. It's a job, hard work, 12 hours a day. Travel, reports, audits, I'm demanding. I ask tough questions. I don't tolerate mistakes, so why do you want me? I don't have experience in large companies. I'm just a bookkeeper. You are an honest, ordinary bookkeeper, he said. That's a rarity these days. He finished his coffee and placed a bill on the table. Think about it until tomorrow. If you decide to accept, here is my business card, the real one with my name. He handed me the card. Darius Benton, CEO, and the logo wasn't for Apex Development. It was for Catalyst Holdings. I'd heard the name, construction, logistics. One of the largest firms in the region. And one more thing, he said, already at the door. I don't expect gratitude for that night at the bus station. I did what any normal person should do. You don't owe me anything. If you turn down the job, I'll understand. And he left. I went back to the shelter and didn't sleep all night. Miss Price found me in the kitchen in the morning, sitting over a cold cup of tea, staring at the wall. Tell me about it, she said, sitting opposite me. I told her everything. The bus station. The card, the conversation at the bistro, everything. She listened silently, then asked, And what's holding you back? I don't know what he really wants, I said. Maybe it's a game. Maybe he... Did you ask him straight up? She interrupted. No. Then ask. If he answers honestly, that's something. If he starts dodging, you turn around and walk away, but sitting here and guessing is foolish. She stood up. Pride is a good thing, but it won't feed a child. Right now, you're working 16 hours a day and making peanuts. How long can you keep that up? 1 year, 2, and then what? Your health won't last forever. If this man is giving you a chance, take it, but on your own terms. Negotiate the rules, and if he breaks them, you leave. I called Darius the next day. I accept, I said, but I have conditions. I'm listening. A 2-month probation period, no personal relationship whatsoever, only work. If I feel like you expect anything else, I walk away, no drama, no explanation. There was a silence. Accepted, he said. Anything else? Yes, I want to understand who I'm working for. You said you also sat in that bus station. What does that mean? Another pause. It's a long story. I'll tell you when there's time. Start Monday, 9 a.m. The office address is on the card. And he hung up. The Catalyst Holdings office occupied 3 floors in the Onyx Tower on Peachtree Street. I arrived at 8:30 wanting to come early and get my bearings. The security guard checked my ID and gave me a badge. The secretary at the reception desk smiled. You must be Morgan. They're waiting for you. 6th floor, office 601. The elevator was mirrored. I looked at my reflection, pale, thin, in the only decent suit I'd bought on sale. Among all these people in expensive jackets, I looked like an imposter, but I remembered Miss Price's words. On your own terms. Office 601 was spacious but modest. No ostentatious luxury. A desk, chairs, a computer, shelves stacked with files. Darius was sitting at the desk in a simple shirt without a jacket. The unshaven look remained, but he no longer looked like a drifter. He looked like a man who didn't care what others thought of him. Have a seat, he said. I'll brief you now. For the next 2 hours, he explained the structure of the holding company. 5 main companies, dozens of contractors, hundreds of employees, billions in revenue, and he had built all of it himself from scratch in 15 years. Your job is financial flow analysis, he said at the end. Look for leaks, audit contractors, make sure money isn't walking out the door. People like the previous bookkeeper exist in every large company. Your job is to find them. Why me? I asked. You must have a security department, auditors. We have auditors, but they check against templates. You see what others miss. You proved it once, prove it again. He stood up. Come on, I'll show you your office. The first few weeks, I worked like a woman possessed. I arrived at 8, left at 10 p.m. I picked Aaliyah up from the corporate daycare. It stayed open until 9 p.m. for people like me. The daycare was wonderful. Bright rooms, kind teachers, good food. Aaliyah stopped crying in the mornings. She loved it there. She started telling me about her friends, Maggie, Dean, Stella. At work, things were tougher. I quickly realized that people at Catalyst Holdings viewed me with suspicion. Whispers behind my back, sideways glances, fragments of conversations drifting past me. Where did she come from? They say the boss hired her personally. Wonder what she did to deserve that. I tried to ignore it and just do my job. 1 month later, I found a second scheme of theft. One of the top executives, Eugene Perry, the logistics director, had been taking kickbacks for years through Shell transportation companies. The scale was serious, about $750,000 over 3 years. I wrote the report and sent it to Darius. The next day, Eugene came to my office. He was a hefty man in his late 50s with a heavy gaze and a manner of speaking like he was doing you a favor just by talking to you. Morgan Ann, he said, sitting down without asking permission. I hear you found some discrepancies in my department's documents. Yes, I did, I said. Listen, you're new here. You don't know how things work. These discrepancies, they're everywhere. That's how business works. Everyone does it. Not everyone, I said. Everyone who wants to survive, he said coldly. Listen to me. I'm ready to compensate you for your inconvenience. $25,000 cash right now. He placed an envelope on the desk in front of me. I looked at it, then at him. Take that and leave. 50,000, he said. His face was changing. The good-natured mask was dropping away. Leave, I said. He stood up, leaning over the desk toward me, and his entire demeanor shifted. You don't understand who you're messing with, girl. I have connections with the police, with the IRS, everywhere. I can make your life very difficult. I stood too. Get out of my office now. He stood there for a moment, staring at me with eyes full of rage. "You'll regret this," he hissed, and he walked out, slamming the door so hard the walls shook. My hands were shaking for hours afterward, but I didn't change a single word in that report. Eugene was fired a week later, quietly, without scandal. I heard that Darius gave him a choice: return the money and resign or face criminal charges. He chose to resign and disappear. After that, the attitude toward me in the office changed. The whispering didn't stop entirely, but now there was something else mixed in with it: fear. My relationship with Darius remained strictly professional. He didn't flirt. He didn't hint at anything. He didn't invite me to dinner. In meetings, he addressed me by my first and last name just like everyone else. But I noticed the small things. Once I mentioned in passing to a colleague that I loved coffee with cinnamon. The next day, a high-end coffee machine appeared in my office, and a jar of cinnamon. "For all department employees," the secretary said. But the department consisted only of me. Another time, I mentioned in a meeting that I hadn't read a certain classic book on financial analysis. That evening, a copy was on my desk with a bookmark. No note, no signature. The corporate daycare where Aaliyah attended turned out to be the best in the city. I found this out by chance when one of the mothers at the playground said she'd been trying to get her kids in for years and couldn't. Too expensive, too long a waiting list. 3 months passed. One evening, I was working late as usual. Darius came into my office. "Still here?" he asked. "Finishing the vestment report." I nodded, silent for a moment. "Can I ask a non-work question?" he said. I tensed up. "Try me. Are you still living at the Haven?" "No, I'm renting a room not far from the office. A room you can't afford an apartment yet." "Not yet." "I'm saving for a down payment on a mortgage." He nodded. He looked like he wanted to say something but couldn't bring himself to. "What is it?" I asked. "Nothing, I'm just glad things are working out for you. You're strong." "I'm not strong," I said. "I just don't give up." "That's the same thing," he said. He turned to leave, then suddenly stopped. "You asked why I was sitting in that bus station. If you want, I can tell you." "Not now," I said. "It's too late, but I do want to hear it sometime." He looked at me long and closely. "Then Saturday, if you're free, not dinner, not a date, just a conversation in the park on a bench like normal people." I thought for a second. "Okay." We met on Saturday at Piedmont Park. Darius was in jeans and a simple jacket, looking like a regular person again, not a billionaire, just a man. We walked along the path. Aaliyah ran ahead, chasing pigeons, and Darius watched her with this expression on his face like he was memorizing every moment. "I grew up in the group home system," Darius began without preamble. "I don't remember my parents. I only know my mother died of an overdose when I was 3. Father unknown." I remained silent, listening. "Life in the group home was rough. The older kids and the staff hit us. I learned not to cry, then I learned to fight back. Then I learned to think 3 steps ahead so I wouldn't have to fight back. At 18, they released me. They gave me a certificate, $500, and a room in a hostel for 6 months. After that, I was on my own." He paused. Aaliyah ran up to us and showed him a pebble she had found. He inspected it seriously, turning it over in his hands like it was treasure. "That's a beautiful rock," he said. "You're a great collector." She smiled and ran off to find another one. "I lost the room after 2 months," Darius continued. "Couldn't find a job, no experience, no connections, no education. Who needed me? I scraped by doing odd jobs, then those dried up too. I ended up at the bus station, that very one. I stayed there for 3 nights, eating out of trash cans. On the 4th night, I decided I'd had enough. Not enough of living, but enough of feeling sorry for myself. I got up and went to look for work." "And you found it?" I asked. "Loading trucks at the farmer's market. The pay was peanuts, but they fed me. The market owner was a complicated man. 6 months later, he offered me a chance to move up in ways you can imagine." "A crime ring?" I asked. "Yeah, I refused. They beat me up. Broke 3 ribs, hurt my kidney. I was in the hospital for 2 months." "Oh, God," I said. "It was the best thing that ever happened to me," he said. "I had time to think in the hospital. I decided I would become richer than all of them, but I'd do it honestly. No bloodshed, no stealing, no shady deals. I would prove that there was another way." "And did you prove it?" I asked. "You be the judge. I started by reselling old electronics, buying broken things, fixing them, selling them, then small business, then apartment renovations. Then construction. I lost everything twice, started over. Now I'm 34. I have a holding company, thousands of employees, billions in revenue, and a women's shelter. He nodded toward the horizon. The shelter is because I remember what it's like to sit in a bus station and think that no one in the world cares about you. We reached the pond. Aaliyah was feeding ducks with breadcrumbs that Darius had brought in his pocket. But you know the funniest thing, Darius said quietly. I have everything, money, homes, cars, everything a person could ever want, but no family, no real friends. People see a billionaire and want something from him. No one sees me. He fell silent. Aaliyah laughed. A duck snatched a crumb right out of her fingers. I see you, I said softly. He turned toward me, and there was something vulnerable in his eyes that I'd never seen before. I don't know how to talk pretty, he said. I don't know how to court a woman. I spent my whole life building a business and forgot how to build a relationship. But if you give me a chance, I'll try to learn. I was quiet, looking at my daughter, at the ducks, at the man beside me who had gone through hell and remained a good person. I'm not ready, I said finally. Not yet, I need time. He nodded. I'll wait, he said simply. And we just stood there side by side, watching Aaliyah laugh and the ducks squabble over crumbs. And I felt peaceful, genuinely peaceful, for the first time in a very long time. Then the past reminded me of itself. Andre. I had almost forgotten about him completely. He hadn't called, hadn't written, hadn't tried to connect with me or Aaliyah. I'd heard from acquaintances that he was living with Kiana, who supported him. Drinking. Not working. A typical story of someone who couldn't get his life together. But one day, I received a summons to court. Andre had filed a lawsuit, not for child support, but to determine custody. He was demanding that Aaliyah be handed over to him. I read the papers and couldn't believe my eyes. He threw us out into the freezing cold, and now he wanted to take my daughter. The lawyer I consulted explained it was a shakedown. He doesn't want the child, he wants money. He'll drop the case if you pay him. In these cases, they usually ask for $25,000 to $50,000. I didn't have that kind of money. The lawyer hesitated, then said something that made my stomach drop. I should warn you, his lawyer is from the firm of Vincent Everett, your ex's rich friend, the one who covered up his theft at work years ago. So it won't be a fair fight, I said. No. It won't be. I went to the court hearing alone. I didn't want to ask Darius for help. This was my affair, my battle to fight. The courtroom was small and stuffy. Andre sat at the table opposite me in a suit, clean shaven and uncharacteristically sober. Beside him sat a lawyer in expensive glasses with a stack of documents. His name was somewhere in all those papers, I'm sure, but all I could think about was that this man was being paid to destroy me. The lawyer spoke smoothly, confidently. He painted a picture of an unstable mother, inconsistent income, living in a shelter, a child suffering without a father. The father, on the other hand, was on the path to redemption and wanted to give his daughter a complete family. The judge, a woman in her 50s with a weary face, listened and made notes. I defended myself as best I could. I talked about that night. The bus station, how he called Aaliyah a dumb broad. I presented papers from the daycare, character references, receipts for children's items, everything I had. The lawyer countered every argument. No proof, one-sided interpretation. Mother is alienating the child from the father. I felt my energy draining away. I was fighting alone against a machine designed to take my daughter from me. Then the courtroom door opened. Darius walked in. He silently crossed the room, sat down in the last row, and folded his hands across his chest. The judge looked up and her face went pale. She recognized him. Continue, the judge told the lawyer, but her voice had changed completely. Something had shifted in that courtroom, something fundamental. The lawyer turned around, recognized him too. For a second, he lost his train of thought entirely. The judge announced a recess. After the recess, everything changed. The judge started asking Andre uncomfortable questions. Why hadn't he shown interest in his daughter for 1 year? Why hadn't he paid child support? Did he have a stable income? Andre stammered. He got his facts mixed up. The lawyer tried to help, but the judge cut him off sharply. The decision was announced 1 hour later. Andre's suit was denied completely. Custody of the child would remain with the mother. Andre was granted the right to visitation under a structured schedule, but only in the mother's presence. Furthermore, Andre was required to pay child support for the entire previous year, calculated based on the average regional salary. Andre bolted from the courtroom, slamming the door so hard it echoed through the hallway. I stood in the middle of the room, unable to believe it was over. Darius approached me. "Are you all right?" he asked. "Why did you come?" I asked. "I didn't ask you to." "You didn't ask, but I couldn't watch a good person being drowned just because they're honest," he said. "The judge recognized me. I financed the renovation of the courthouse building last year and several charitable projects she's involved in, so I just sat there." She drew her own conclusions. Maybe she got scared, maybe she was ashamed, or maybe she just decided it was easier to issue a fair ruling. I was silent for a long moment, processing everything. "You're angry," he said. "I don't know, I probably should be. You intervened in my life without asking." "Yes, I did intervene," he said calmly. "And I would do it again because seeing you destroyed was unbearable. If that's wrong, I'm prepared to apologize." I was silent for another minute. "Thank you," I said finally. He nodded. We left the courthouse together. Outside, a light spring rain was falling. He stopped and turned to me. "I'm still waiting," he said, "for when you'll be ready." I took his hand, just took it and held it. He froze. We stood in the rain, holding hands and saying nothing. It wasn't an answer, not yes yet, but no longer no, and that was enough for me. 1 year passed. Is 1 year a lot or a little? Enough for wounds to heal, enough to learn to trust again, enough to understand that happiness doesn't come on its own. You have to build it day by day, step by step. I stood in front of the mirror in my own place. A small 2-bedroom I had bought with a mortgage 3 months ago in a good neighborhood. My own place. My own home. A dream I'd almost stopped believing in. Darius had offered to help with the down payment. I refused. He'd offered to move me into his huge house on the riverfront. I also refused. "Someday," I told him. "When I'm ready." He waited. He knew how to wait. Tonight was a special night, the annual charity gala for Atlanta's business elite. Darius's name had been leaked to the press. Journalists discovered he'd been funding the Haven Shelter and 10 other charitable projects in the city all these years. He was nominated for Philanthropist of the Year. He couldn't refuse, and he asked me to go with him publicly. For the first time as his date, I put on the emerald dress I'd bought especially for the evening. I took my time choosing it, wanting to look elegant but not flashy. My earrings were simple silver hoops, a gift from Darius for my birthday. Low heels so I wouldn't stumble from nervousness. Aaliyah was sitting on the bed watching me get ready. She was almost 3 now. She spoke in sentences, knew colors and numbers up to 10, loved to draw and dance. "Mama pretty," she said. "Thank you, sweetie. Is Darius coming soon?" "Yes, soon." She clapped her hands. Miss Joyce, our kind 60-something nanny, sat in an armchair reading a book. "Don't worry, Morgan," she said. "Everything will be fine. You deserve this evening." The doorbell rang. Aaliyah ran to open it. Darius is here." I walked into the hall. Darius stood in the doorway in a dark suit, no tie as always, in his hands a small bouquet of wildflowers. "These are for you," he said to Aaliyah, handing her the bouquet. She grabbed the flowers and pressed them to her chest. "Thank you, Mama, look, I got flowers." Darius looked at me. I saw him pause for a second, and there was something in his eyes that took my breath away. "You're beautiful," he said simply. "Just thank you," I said. He held out his hand to me. "Ready?" "No," I said, "but let's go." The Fairmont Hotel glittered with lights, red carpet, photographers, a crowd of guests in evening wear. I gripped Darius's hand and tried not to think about the fact that everyone was looking at us. "Relax," he whispered. "They're nobody, just people. Money doesn't make a person better or worse." "Trust me, I know." We entered the ballroom. Crystal chandeliers cast thousands of golden sparkles onto the marble floor. Waiters with trays of champagne moved through the crowd like ghosts. Everything was like a movie, except this wasn't a film. It was my life. Guests turned their heads and whispered. I heard snippets. "That's Benton. Who is she with? Where did she come from?" Darius walked forward, paying no attention. People approached us, greeting us, shaking his hand, offering polite niceties. He answered briefly, politely, but without warmth. It was clear he was uncomfortable here. He hated this. We each took a glass of champagne and moved toward a window. "I hate this," he said quietly. The smiles, the handshakes, everyone wants something from me. No one asks how I'm doing. How are you doing? I asked. He looked at me and smiled. A real smile, not a social one. Right now, I'm doing great. And then I saw him. Andre. He was standing by the bar in a cheap suit, trying to look expensive. Beside him was Kiana in a red dress that was too short, too bright. She was fanning herself and looking around the room like a queen at a ball. Andre was here as a guest of Vincent Everett, the rich friend who had bailed him out so many times, a +1 at a society event. Not a standalone person, but an attachment to someone else's invitation. He was laughing at something Kiana said, and he looked pleased with himself. The man who 1 year ago threw his wife and child into the cold. The man who then tried to steal his daughter through the courts. And then he turned his head and saw me. I watched his face change. Surprise, recognition, and then fear, because he saw who was standing beside me. His fingers unclasped. The champagne glass flew down and shattered on the marble floor. Champagne sprayed everywhere, soaking his pants and Kiana's shoes. She shrieked. Waiters rushed to clean up. And I stood there looking at the man who had once broken my life, and I felt nothing. No anger, no pain, not even satisfaction, just emptiness. He had become a nobody to me, but Andre shouldn't have approached. Any smart person in his place would have pretended not to notice and gone to the other side of the room. But Andre was never smart, and he'd been drinking more than was wise. I watched him throw back 2 glasses at the bar and then stride toward us. Kiana tried to hold him back, but he shook off her hand. Well, well, he said loudly, stopping directly in front of us. Morgan Sterling, long time no see. People around us began to turn. I felt dozens of eyes on me. Andre, I said evenly, leave. What's wrong? Can't I say hello to my ex-wife? He grinned. I see you landed on your feet, found a sugar daddy quickly. How much is he paying you, by the night or monthly? The room went silent. Everyone was staring at us now. I wanted to answer, but Darius placed a hand on my shoulder. You must be Andre Talbot, he asked calmly. His voice was quiet, but it had this weight to it that made the entire room lean in. Yeah, Andre said, his confidence wavering. One thing to insult your ex-wife, Darius said in that same level, measured voice. Another to talk back to Darius Benton. Andre went white. The same Andre Talbot who 4 years ago stole $35,000 from his employer's cash register and didn't serve time only because Vincent Everett covered the damages. I have copies of the police report and the restitution agreement. Would you like me to show them to the guests here? Andre started shaking. Darius continued, and every word fell like a stone into still water. You threw this woman and her 1-year-old child out into the street. In January, at 1 degree Fahrenheit, you called your daughter a dumb broad. You failed to pay child support for 1 year. You tried to steal your child through the courts to blackmail her mother for money. And now you stand here and dare to speak of morality. Andre opened his mouth but couldn't utter a word. I have a recording of your conversation with a creditor to whom you owe $100,000. You promised to pay him back as soon as you scammed the dumb broad for cash and settled your debt. Darius pulled out his phone. Want me to play it for everyone here? Andre started shaking violently. You wouldn't dare. I would dare, but I won't, Darius said. You know why? Because you are a nobody. You are not worth 5 minutes of this attention. You are a small, pathetic man who spent his entire life trying to seem bigger than he is. A man who destroys the people who love him because he hates himself. Darius took a step forward. Andre backed away. Leave now, and if you ever come near Morgan or Aaliyah again, I will destroy you. Not physically, legally. Financially, socially, you won't be able to find a job sweeping streets in this city. Do you understand me? Security guards were already walking toward us. Andre looked around, searching for support. Vincent turned away. Kiana was looking at him with absolute disgust. You're all hypocrites, Andre hissed. The guards took him by the arms to the exit. One of them said, I can walk myself. Let go. But they escorted him out anyway. Kiana rushed after him, her heels clicking, leaving him to his fate. The ballroom was silent for another second. Then the dam broke. Voices boomed, whispers started up again. Darius turned to me. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have. No, I said. It was exactly right. And for the first time that evening, I felt like I could breathe. I watched the awards ceremony from the audience. Darius walked onto the stage awkwardly, clearly unused to public attention. The host spoke about charity, about the millions spent helping people, about the Haven shelter that saved hundreds of women. Darius took the microphone. His hands weren't shaking, but I could see the discomfort in his stance. "I don't like speeches," he said, "but since I have to..." The room quieted down. "I grew up in the group home system. I know what it's like when there's no one to help you, when it's you against the world, when there seems to be no way out. That's why I help. Not for fame, not for tax breaks, but because one day when I was sitting in a bus station with an empty pocket, a stranger gave me a piece of bread just because, and I survived." He paused and looked into the audience right at me. "This award isn't mine. It belongs to every woman who found the strength to get up after being knocked down, to every mother who protects her child, to every person who refused to give up." He raised the statuette. "It belongs to my Morgan." The audience applauded. People stood up. I felt tears streaming down my cheeks, and I wasn't ashamed. After the reception, Darius drove me home. We sat in the car outside my apartment building, not getting out. "Thank you," I said. "For what?" "For everything. For that night at the bus station. For the job, for believing in me, for waiting." He was silent for a moment. "I want to ask you something," he finally said. "I've wanted to for a long time, but I was afraid." "Ask," I said. "Are you ready, not for a wedding, not for anything official, just to truly be together, to let me in, to build a life with me?" I looked at him, at the man who had walked through hell and remained good, who helped others because he remembered what it was like to be alone, who had waited for me for 1 year without once pressuring me or demanding anything. "Yes," I said. "I'm ready." He let out a breath as if he had been holding it for a very long time. "Then may I kiss you?" I laughed. "You may." And he kissed me carefully, gently, as if afraid to startle me. 6 months later, we were standing on the beach in Miami, Florida. Darius, Aaliyah, and me. A small house was behind us, not a mansion, but cozy and bright with a porch and a swing set in the yard. This was my dream, the ocean, a home near the water. A happy daughter. Aaliyah was building something in the sand, her brows furrowed in concentration. Darius was helping her, covered up to his elbows in sand. "Darius, the tower goes here," she ordered. "Yes, Your Majesty," he replied. I watched them, thinking about how strange life was. 1 year ago, I was sitting in a bus station, thinking it was all over, that I was worthless, that my daughter was doomed to grow up in poverty and fear. And now here it was, happiness, not a fairy tale, not perfect, but real. Darius walked over to me, wiping his hands on his jeans. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "That I'm the luckiest person on earth," I said. He laughed. "You are not lucky. You are the strongest woman I know. You didn't give up. Step by step, you climbed out of hell and built a beautiful life. That's not luck, that's character." He pulled a small box from his pocket. My heart leaped. "Is that what I think it is?" I asked. He opened the box. Inside was a simple ring, no diamonds, just a delicate engraving inside. "Step by step," I read. "That's what you told me," Darius said. "In the park, you said you weren't strong, you just didn't give up, step by step." He took my hand. "Morgan, I don't know fancy words or romantic gestures. I spent my whole life building a business and forgot how to build relationships. But with you, I want to learn. Will you marry me?" Aaliyah ran up to us, grabbing both of our legs. "Mama," Darius, "look, I built this, a tower and a wall." I looked at the ring, at Darius. At my daughter covered in sand from head to toe, at the ocean roaring at our feet, at the sky turning pink from the sunset. "Yes," I said. "I will." Darius slipped the ring onto my finger. His hands were shaking. Aaliyah jumped up and down. "Hooray, Mama and Darius, Mama and Darius." She didn't understand what had happened. For her, it was just a happy moment. Mama is smiling, Darius is smiling, everyone is together at the beach. But for me, it was everything. Darius held me tight as if afraid to let go. "Thank you," he whispered, "for being you, for giving me a chance, for believing." I leaned into him. 1 year ago, I was a woman thrown out into the cold without money, without a home, without hope, with a child in my arms and $7 in my pocket. And now I was standing on the beach in the arms of a man who loved me, with a daughter who was happy. A ring on my finger and a whole life ahead. I didn't know what would happen next. No one does. But I wasn't afraid anymore, because I had learned the most important thing, to get up, to keep walking, to never give up, step by step. That's the truth. That's the lesson. That's the thing I want you to understand as you're listening to this story. You don't need luck. You don't need someone to save you. You just need to take one step. And then another. And then another. Because that's where real strength lies, not in grand gestures or perfect moments, but in the decision to keep moving forward when everything inside you wants to quit. My daughter sleeps peacefully now. She'll never remember the cold. She'll never know the fear. And that's my greatest victory. Not the job or the money or even the man I love, but the knowledge that I protected my child. That I never stopped fighting. That I showed her what it looks like to get back up when life knocks you down. Darius and I still drive past the bus station sometimes. We don't stop. We don't need to. Because we both know that the real shelter wasn't a building. It was the moment two strangers chose humanity over indifference. It was the moment I decided that my daughter's future mattered more than my pain. It was the moment I took one step. And then another. If you're listening to this right now and you're struggling, I want you to know something. I'm not special. I'm not unique. I'm just a woman who refused to give up when it would have been easier to surrender. And if I can do it, so can you. You have everything you need inside you already. You just have to believe it. You just have to take that first step, step by step. That's all it takes.